Hey everybody, KC here. So today's Offbeat actually has an interview with Dave Kindred, who's an award-winning sports writer who has written a wonderful memoir called Leave Out the Tragic Parts. And so I'm not going to do any movie reviews today in Offbeat, but I want to do one right here. And I want to do it because, quite frankly, there's a really terrific business lesson from this movie. And the movie's called News of the World with Tom Hanks. And it's on pay-per-view now. I think next week sometime it'll be on streaming services, Netflix, stuff like that. And Tom Hanks plays, it's in 1870. And Tom Hanks plays a former Civil War officer. His name is Captain Jefferson Kyle Kidd. And what Captain Kidd does is he rides, he's in Texas, and he rides from town to town, and he reads newspapers to audiences who pay a little bit of money, and he reads the newspapers and he tells people why the stories are important and how they should think about stories from the newspapers. Basically, Tom Hanks' character in this movie, he's the content guy in 1870. It's really extraordinary. He does exactly what I do, because I do it with a laptop. He does it with a hat and a horse. I'm thinking I might need, I don't think Mrs. Content Guy will let me get a horse, but I'm thinking I really need to get a hat like his. Anyway, the movie's really interesting because what happens in the movie is he finds himself tasked with returning this young girl, played by this fabulous young actress named Helena Zengel. She has basically been living with the Kiowa Indians for reasons we discover, and he's basically tasked with returning her to her family. And it's directed by Paul Greengrass, who did all the Bourne movies. It's really, really good. It's actually the first movie that I've seen that I can think of during the pandemic that I wish I'd seen it on a big screen, because the Western vistas are gorgeous. And I happen to love the Westerns. There are a lot of different scenarios that play out in the film. Some of them are tragic. Some of them, point out to us that maybe we haven't evolved in 2021 as far as we'd like to think we've evolved as a people. In some ways, the movie is reminiscent of The Searchers with John Wayne and Natalie Wood, where John Wayne's character after the Civil War is trying to recapture his niece, who's been actually kidnapped by an Indian tribe, directed by John Ford. If you've never seen The Searchers, you should absolutely see The Searchers. But what really makes me want to talk about this movie with you is the fact that it talks about the power of storytelling, right? Not just in the newspapers, but the way that Tom Hanks is able to take the news and frame it in a way that puts it into context. Yeah, with a little bit of attitude too. And there are a number of examples in the movie about how he's able to use words and performance, but mostly words, to shape and reshape how people feel about specific issues. It's really, really interesting that way. It explains to us that simply by putting words together, the right words together in the right order, you can actually change the way people think. Tom Stoppard once wrote in one of his plays that if you do the right thing with words, you can nudge the world a little. And that's exactly what News of the World is about. It's a really interesting movie. Hanks is, as always, terrific. He just continues to prove that he can do anything. But the business lesson about using words and using language to shape how people think, it's really, really powerful. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.